Hi there, welcome to Pins and Patience. My name is Jeremy. I'm carrying on with the build of the captain's jacket. The two pieces here are the shoulder cap that you would see, and then this is a piece of bias that I had created. This video is going to be dedicated to creating the mitered corner that you're going to find with the bias over it. Okay, let's get into it. Doesn't matter which side that you want to start on, whether it's being the short side or the long side. In this case, it doesn't matter. As you can see here, I've done a lot of trial and error stitching going on. So that's what happened with this. The first thing that I'm going to share with you is that as you lay your bias strip down, you want to put the edge corner to corner, lining this edge up along the seam allowance. Now ultimately this seam allowance, as I bring out my measurement tool, is approximately a 1/2 inch. Yeah, it's a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So with that being said, to make sure that I am not going to be sewing within the seam allowance, I'm going to take my seam gauge here, and I'm going to mark a 1/2 inch to the inside of the bias. This is going to ensure I don't sew within that seam allowance. So line it up corner to corner, utilizing this point here. So that's my 1/2 inch. Now in the next process, I'm going to find my 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And what this is going to do, now this is again for instruction purposes only, so I'm using these measurements just to show you a bit more. So I'm going to measure the 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, or 5/8 of an inch mark. So I've got that mark. So I've got my 1/2 inch from the seam allowance of the shoulder cap, and I've got my mark of 5/8 of an inch where I'm going to start sewing. However you want to mark this is up to you. In this case, in one of the videos that I was watching, the instructor said, you know, whichever amount you're going to use, utilize the same amount. So in this case, I'm going to mark 3/8 of an inch. 3/8 of an inch along this side here. And in this case, I'm going to put a pin right in this 3/8 of an inch mark, because that is going to be where I'm going to stop sewing along this length. So 3/8 of an inch there. Now on the other side, you're not going to mark anything just yet. Okay, now the bias tape is now in line with the raw edge of the shoulder cap. I'm going to drop in some pins here. Now, because I want to have a good solid line and I don't want things to move, I am going to put pins all the way down to the actual 3/8 of an inch pin that I've got going down here. The next process, I am going to take this over to the machine and I am going to run my line of stitching at 5/8 of an inch, stopping at the 3/8 of an inch mark. All right, so I have my two chalk lines here so far. I've got my 5/8 of an inch, I've got my half inch going back towards this way, so I'm not sewing into the seam allowance of the shoulder cap. Drop the presser foot, drop the needle, do a quick locking stitch. Now in this case, I'm about to approach my 3/8 of an inch pin point, so I'm going to reduce the speed on my machine. Okay, remove that pin, should be 3/8 of an inch. Lift, pull. There, I've got a solid line coming all the way down here, 5/8 of an inch. I've got that 1/2 inch in here away from the seam allowance of the shoulder cap. Now, this is where I was getting stuck, and I could not understand for the life of me how things were going to work. So, we're going to go back to the green board. Moving forward, we're now going to take this and pull it at a right angle. If everything works out, then and again, this is just for demonstration processes. I'm not going to be doing this exact to my final build process, but in this case, you're going to bend it back and you're going to make it essentially in line with the center quilt seam of the shoulder cap. Doing that, that's fine. It'll come along here. So then you got to rotate it. Draw this line all the way up here. There's no pins needed at the moment, but then you're going to fold this back on here. So you've just created a right angle. So we're going to go back here, ran our seam, okay? Going to run that fold right in line here, away from you. And now bring it back down so it's square. Still at that point, square, 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 lift, run it in line. Now, of course, this is the next part, keeping your finger here at the top, and then folding this over. All right, there we have it. I now have this in line. I have this folded over. It's as square as it's going to get for this large piece. Now I'm going to take my seam gauge, and just as I measured 3/8 of an inch from this corner going this way, I'm going to measure 3/8 of an inch in this direction. And remember, it's not from the fold point, it's from the edge of the shoulder cap. Contrasting colors here, black, and this is a soapstone pencil. So that is our 3/8. That's where we're essentially going to move in. Now, in this point, I am going to drop a pin in here. And again, just like last time, I am going to measure 5/8 of an inch from that 3/8 of an inch inset. So here we are. Now, it doesn't matter if this is connected or if this is in line with the raw edge right now. That's not an issue because the edge of the bias tape is going to be in line with the edge of the shoulder cap. So here we go. So we're going to mark the 5/8 of an inch, just making sure we've got this all in line. Again, as you move closer to the seam allowance, I use this curve as my marker. I just go straight down and put my pin in here, and that should be covered off. So there you go. Your next step, you drop your needle and you will take your 5/8 of an inch seam allowance there. I'm going to show you something because off camera I had done up to this step already. So here we are, 5/8 of an inch seam allowance here. 3/8 left from that 3/8 pin. Don't know if you can see it, but I'll remark it. That was the 3/8 of an inch mark that I created. Here's the 5/8 of an inch point where we start in, 5/8 all the way down along here. And what this is going to do, this is going to give you a nice little point. This is going to give you enough bias that's going to cover all the quilt lines. Now, by some miracle, and I don't know how I managed, as I fold this over, the point of the bias corner, of the mitered corner, is actually in line with the quilt line. It's exactly how it's supposed to be, and I don't know how I managed to do that. But, so we'd roll this over, and now on the other side, what you can do, if you so choose, as you look back here, you can trim this bulk. You can cut this bulk right off here. Now, because I've got 2 shoulder caps and I've got plenty of bias, I am going to do that, and you're watching me do this for the first time. So I'm going to, again, just cut a little bit off this corner here. And I'm not going to cut into the shoulder cap itself, or maybe I am. So I'm going to cut into the shoulder cap itself to begin with and see how that turns out. So I'm going to go across at an angle, reducing some bulk. I'm going to drop the bias, see if that does anything else. No, we still have a little bit more bulk in there, but then again, remember, this is 5/8 of an inch that we had used, so we only probably have, if I'm going to measure this out, zoom gauge. Yeah, it's about 1/8 of an inch. Maybe it's yeah, it's a 1/4 inch. So that's all we have left is a 1/4 inch. But so I've trimmed that. I'm now going to again fold this over. Go back down to here. Going to cut this guy. Cut that triangle. And roll this back in. And that's going to reduce your bulk. Now, as you can see, for the width of the bias tape that I chose, and because I ran 5/8 of an inch up this way, I don't have enough to evenly, and without twisting everything, I don't have enough bias to fold over to the other side. So that's okay. I just need to do some measuring, and then we can work from there. But fold it over, do that process. You will run direct, well, hopefully you'll run in line as I was doing there. I hope this helps you. This took me days to figure out. I was reviewing YouTube videos. I was asking people online for help. So that is what has happened. So we're going to quickly review. Once you take your bias tape, doesn't matter which side you start on, short side, long side of the shoulder cap, you're going to place your bias tape along the length of it here, edge lined up to edge. In this case, again, seam allowance here around the curve is a 1/2 inch. Seam allowance that I chose to use going into the shoulder cap was 5/8 of an inch. Ran my seam down here. I put a pin at this corner here for 3/8 of an inch, and that is where I stopped sewing. Brought it up over, created my fold. And creating my fold, in doing so, right angles, pinned everything here, measured, again, 3/8 of an inch. So I have an equidistance 3/8 inch on the inside, 3/8 inch on that side. Again, marking 5/8 of an inch, going all the way down here, stopping at that 1/2 inch point. Now, about to flip it over. Again, we cut bulk, and then roll it back over. So, I hope that helped. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.